Hello, hello, and welcome back to this episode. You're going to love it. You're going to love this show. It's just me today. I'm flying solo because Jesse is at home taking care of the baby because, someone has to keep that tiny little human fed. It's not me. You're going to love this episode. In case you were wondering, also, yes, Jesse is with the four other boys to our four other children. So, if at any point I sound sleep deprived or if I sound slightly unhinged, it's because I'm running purely on 3 cups of coffee and willpower. That's right, baby. Hey, who needs sleep when you have neuroscience, when you have spicy debates and topics like this, and you have a deep passion for dismantling outdated autism narratives? All right, let's get into it. So, today's episode, we are talking about autism, we are talking about syndromes, and I'm going to have to cough on this one, the cure conversation, because it pops up, but I promise you, you're going to find some value in this. You're going to find some information and alternative ways and different viewpoints. You know how my brain works. I go down different pathways and see things a little bit different. So we're going to talk about that. All right. Not lately, but gosh, for quite some time now, when I post on social media, some folks, not all folks, they lurk in the shadows of those comments like they're about ready to drop some top secret classified intel. And this is what they do. They challenge me when I talk about autism. This is what they say. They say, hey, but what about the autistic people who suffer greatly, the ones who require 24/7 care and they have lifelong needs? What if they want an intervention to remove their autistic traits? What if they want a cure? What if their family wants a cure for them? So I think that's a very fair and valid discussion. And I want to break it down on thoughts for you and how we can reshape that narrative so everybody can get some valuable information. So the cure debate, where does this cure debate get messy? All right, so I want to first start off by saying that most autistic people do not want a cure or intervention to erase their neurotype. Again, I'm going to repeat that. Most autistic people, they don't want a cure. They don't want an intervention to erase their neurotype. The reason is because autism is not a disease. It's not something that needs to be fixed. But I do understand there's a population of people that are speaking about wanting a cure or wanting some type of intervention to get rid of the autistic traits. And I am going to share why those select people might feel a little bit differently. Okay, here's number one. Internalized ableism is a real thing. If society constantly tells you over and over, whether it's directly to you or indirectly, that being autistic is wrong or that it's less than, what's going to happen? You're going to start to believe it. Just ask left-handed folks who were once forced to write with the right hand. That was a thing. Yeah, talk to them. This isn't just unique to autism. It's for other marginalized communities as well who go through struggles with internalized negative messaging. Okay, so that's the first thing. The second thing, and this is super important, this episode honestly is worth listening to more than once. Sink this stuff in. So number two, co-occurring conditions. This has to be a discussions because co-occurring conditions complicate the picture. Some individuals who wish for a cure are often dealing with co-occurring conditions. Some with intellectual disabilities, complex medical issues, and these can cause significant daily struggles. I did a poll on social media as well as through emails to those who had been maybe received a diagnosis. Now, I'm not a fan of using levels, but for examples on this topic, level 3, what are the significant challenges you're hearing about? And 10 out of 10 times, the things that were brought up in the conversation were things such as different types of syndromes and gastroesophageal reflex disorder. And gosh, there was a laundry list of things that people were sending in that were co-occurring with autism. So their challenges were not about autism itself. They were about additional conditions or something else that came with it. The topic that we're going to talk about to elaborate on this is Syndromic versus non-syndromic autism. What is the difference and why is this important? Okay, here's where it gets a little interesting. Syndromic autism. So that's autism that occurs as part of a larger genetic syndrome. So for example, Fragile X syndrome, Rett syndrome. There's a lot of other syndromes that are out there. In these cases, autism is secondary to the broader condition. There is a primary need. It's like on an IEP, when you look at what the primary eligibility is, and there's a second eligibility, what is the thing that's more prominent that's impacting the individual or making the daily life struggles a thing, right? What's the primary thing? And in this case, the syndrome is the primary case. Autism is secondary. Really important. I know what you're thinking right now too. You're like, holy guacamole, that is good stuff. Holy guacamole, I don't even have chips. Okay, what is non-syndromic autism then? Okay, so that's the most common form of autism. That's what most autistic people have. That accounts for up to 85% of the autistic community. All right, that's what we're looking at. And it's not linked to a specific genetic syndrome. That's what most people think of when they talk about autism. Here's the challenge. The research and in public on a large scale, they oftentimes center these discussions around syndromic autism, making it seem like that's the default autistic experience. I'm not going to get political or anything. I just want you to use this information and kind of think large scale. What is put into the public's eye about what the autistic experience is? What is being centered, right? The reality is that most autistic people do not have a syndromic form of autism. And that matters because when discussions about treatment happen, they often conflate syndromic and non-syndromic autism, which leads to misguided assumptions about what autistic individuals want and what autistic individuals really need, okay? Oh, that's a lot of information. And valuable information. Now, here's something that I know you're going to ask, and I'm going to answer it. But speech dude, what if some autistic people do want a cure? We have to address the hard questions. I told you this was going to be a spicy debate. Now I'm all here for it. I'll put extra Tabasco sauce on this debate. So what if some autistic people do want a cure? Well, here is my thoughts. People who express this view likely haven't been exposed to neurodiversity affirming perspectives. They haven't connected with other autistic people in the community. They have these strength-based views. They haven't shifted their lens. They only have heard of autism as described as a deficit. This is a true thing. I work in high schools with teens. Sometimes when I even mention the word autism, they're like, no, I don't want to talk about it. I'm like trying to come in with a healthy discussion, and they've already built up their negative take on what autism is. A simple Google search on autism is going to send you down the rabbit hole of deficit-based. So there's a lot of issues, but that's the reality, that the people who do want to cure often express it because they haven't been exposed to different shifts of view. All right. Wanting relief from struggles. And I want to highlight this. Wanting relief from struggles is not the same as wanting a cure for autism. Okay. Many challenges that autistic individuals face are due to the environment, being exposed to too many loud sounds, bright lights, people being overwhelmingly, talking all at once behind them. It's also due to a lack of accommodations, right? That's a big one. And the biggest one, societal misunderstandings. This episode is really, I'm trying to highlight that piece of it. Okay. So that's the challenge that autistic people face. It's not the autistic traits. The challenges that they face are the external barriers, are the society's misperceptions and misunderstandings, and the lack of accommodations. That's really it. It's not autism itself. If a person is struggling, the solution isn't to remove their autism. It's not to cure their autism. It's to provide support. It's to provide understanding. It's to provide empathy and come with accommodation so that they can thrive, so that they can live a harmonious life. That's what it is. That's what we do if a person's struggling. We don't remove the autism. We provide the right support. We provide the right services. We provide the right understanding. That's huge. Okay, let's recap that. Most autistic people do not want a cure. They want understanding. They want accommodations. They want support. Some do wish for a cure. Okay, we'll touch on that. Some do wish for a cure, but likely have internalized deficit-based views. Or again, they struggle with co-occurring conditions. Maybe it's a family member, maybe it's a neighbor, maybe it's people that they've worked with a client, but that's really the individuals that talk about the cure. Syndromic autism is different from non-syndromic autism, but discussions about those are usually grouped together, and that oftentimes leads to misleading narratives around autism. And again, the real issue isn't autism. It's a world that refuses to make space for autistic people. Let's just say neurodivergent people in general. Whew! You know what? I told you I was going to give a lot of information. There's some info dumping for you. I want to wrap this episode up. I don't like to keep episodes too long, but I like to keep them straight and to the point and fun. I have some final thoughts around this. So my final thoughts are we have to continue centering autistic voices. We have to continue the discussion of how autism is an internal experience. It's not a set of external observations, right? It's an internal experience. Centering autistic voices is so huge. We have to talk about the diversity within the autism spectrum. I get that, right? Some people have a greater intensity for sensitivity and sensory needs. Some may have differences with executive functioning and social interaction, and some might have differences with interoception and their body's ability to send signals to let them know if they're hot or too cold or too much pain or not enough pain or hungry or thirsty. It's just a diversity within a big spectrum. We also have to recognize, and this is huge, the historical harm of cure-focused rhetoric, and we need to focus on empowering autistic individuals to define their own needs, to define their experience. We need to listen to that. That's huge. And maybe, just maybe, my friends, we can stop assuming that neurotypical brain is the gold standard because, gosh, what's the word? I know diversity is the word, but like an ecosystem, like all kinds of brains make up the world, right? That's how this world works. That's super important. So I hope you enjoyed this episode. Before we wrap this up, if you enjoyed this episode and you want some more conversations and you want to challenge outdated narratives, please, right now, here's my phone. I got my phone right here. Go on to your episode, the podcast, or if you're watching this live, and for Making the Shift for Autistic Kids, please do me a favor and scroll down to the bottom where it says ratings and reviews and give this podcast a 5-star rating. That would help me out and Jesse out tremendously so it gets out to others who need to hear these types of things. We need to challenge these discussions. So again, please give this a moment to give it a 5-star rating. If you're thinking about giving it a 1-star rating, my name's Tom Johnson, and this is the Tom Johnson podcast show. Just kidding. But I hope you found this really helpful. If anybody challenges you or has this discussion, please share this episode with them so that way they can learn about all of these things, because this is such an important topic. And I really appreciate you tuning on in. Everyone, we will see you next time. I hope this episode has been one to grow on.